What's up, everybody? So, I just wrote a piece for realmoneyatthestreet.com. It'll be coming out later, but I talked about this is interesting because you're not really hearing a lot of discussion about this. But if you remember, Trump, all during his campaign, he was talking about how low interest rates are hurting the middle class. They're hurting savers, hurting the middle class. And that's true. As I've spoken about many times in the past, the government is a net payer of interest. When the Fed cuts rates, then that income, and especially when it buys assets, whoa, what's in my eye? That income is removed from the economy. That's a lot of these inflation nut jobs like Schiff and all these people. They didn't understand that, and then when they saw the Fed buying assets and um, boosting the level of reserves in the banking system, they were all screaming hyperinflation, and the dollar was going to collapse, and it was the exact opposite. It was deflationary. So anyway, Trump he said he himself personally he likes low interest rates. He's speaking from a real estate developer's point of view, but he said for the economy, for the middle class, it was a bad thing. So now there are some names surfacing as potential nominees for Fed chair under a Trump administration. Now, Janet Yellen's her term expires in 1 year, January 2018. And Trump was also very critical of Yellen during his campaign. So three names have popped up. One is John Taylor, economist and professor at Stanford, and he's famous for the Taylor rule or the Taylor principle, some fancy thing which basically says if inflation goes up by 1%, let's say, then the Fed should raise its policy rate by more than 1%. I guess you got to be a Stanford professor to come up with that level of genius, right? Not understanding that that's price setting, okay? So if inflation goes up by 1%, then raise prices by more than 1%. That'll fix the inflation. So that's one guy. The next guy is Kevin Warsh. He was a Fed governor, another Stanford graduate, went to Harvard too. And this guy, he's been critical of Yellen and low interest rates. And all these people think like, high rates, and they say it from the viewpoint that high rates, tamp down inflation, control. They don't understand the price setting, all right? And the last guy being mentioned now is Glenn+Hubbard, who was the chairman of the White House Council of Economic Advisors under George W. Bush. Now, Glenn+Hubbard, it's kind of an interesting, sort of funny story behind him. If you've seen the documentary movie Inside Job, which was a fantastic, it won the Academy Award for Best Documentary Film, I believe. It might have been back in 2011. I'm not sure, but you can see the full movie. It's on YouTube, free. All right, Inside Job. The director, the producer was Charles Ferguson. The guy wasn't even a filmmaker, but he did a fantastic job. In one of the scenes, he interviews Glenn+Hubbard, who's a professor at Columbia University here in New York, and he asks some questions, like he says, okay, don't you work? Aren't you a consultant for Wall Street firms? Didn't you write up some reports, basically, giving in glowing terms how wonderful these were, those terrible mortgage securitized products that all blew up? And Glenn+Hubbard gets really, really visibly irritated, and he's like, you got 2 minutes to finish this interview, basically saying, why are you asking me this question? The guy was nailed that he was a shill for Wall Street and their products, okay? So I don't know if Trump would end up putting a guy like him as Fed chair, but those are three names that have popped up so far in consideration. By the way, speaking of Trump, at 11 a.m. Eastern Time this morning, very soon actually, he'll be giving a news conference, which I am going to watch. What time is it now? It's just about that time. I wanna say one more thing, and this is going back again to the philosophy of Bruce Lee. You know, many times I've spoken here about the analogy, the comparison between high-level martial arts and what we do as traders. Okay, this is a highly stressful occupation, avocation, however, whatever it is for you, but it's highly, highly stressful. And if you were a fighter, there's enormous amount, not just stress, but also danger involved in that. I'm going to read a quote. I talked about Bruce Lee's philosophy in the past, no way as way, right? What is martial arts? The true expression of oneself, which is that quote right there is kind of interesting. If anyone saw the Golden Globes on Sunday night and Meryl Streep's, very sanctimonious speech about how necessary and incredible and important actors are, right? If there weren't any actors, then we'd all be just watching football and mixed martial arts, which is not the arts, she says, right? Well, I beg to differ. I beg to differ. And Bruce Lee, when he said the true expression of oneself, what is art? What is the most basic definition of art? Right? The expression, it's self-expression. All right, so Bruce Lee nailed it. Anyway, let me read this comment, and it shows you why Bruce Lee, I think, would have made a fantastic trader, all right? The martial arts are ultimately self-knowledge. A punch or a kick is not to knock the hell out of the guy in front, but to knock the hell out of your ego, your fear, or your hang-ups. Think about that. A punch is not to knock the guy out, but to knock out your ego, your fear, and your hang-ups. And you could literally think of every trade like that. And if you could frame that in your mind, every trade, every investment, it's not about the profit. That's so secondary. And I keep telling you that will come automatically if your head is in the right place. But if you can visualize, or if you can frame every single trade and every single investment as a way to knock down your fears and your egos and your hang-ups, then you have eliminated all the root causes of failure and loss. And that is how you will be able to arrive every single time at profit and grow and become wealthy. All right? Every trade should be considered as an opportunity to knock down your fears and your hang-ups and your ego. Think about it. Brilliant, brilliant stuff, Bruce Lee.